The room goes quiet in the wrong way. Not the kind of quiet that comes before applause. Not the comfortable silence of people listening. This is the quiet that happens when someone has just done something they can't take back. When the air changes and everyone knows it. John is standing near the piano. He's holding an acetate disc. The kind you play once, maybe twice, before it wears out. He's just finished letting them hear it. A new song. Something he's been working on for weeks. Something that matters to him in a way he hasn't quite been able to explain, even to himself. And Mick Jagger is laughing, not a polite chuckle, not a nervous laugh that says he doesn't know what else to do. This is a full, open laugh. Head back, eyes half closed, the kind of laugh that cuts through a room and makes everyone else freeze. There are other people here. Keith, a couple of session musicians, someone from the label, a girlfriend or two leaning against the wall. But none of them are laughing. They're looking at their hands, at the floor, anywhere but at John. John doesn't move. He's still holding the acetate. His face doesn't change, but his fingers tighten just slightly on the edge of the disc, enough that if you were watching closely, you'd see it. Mick finally stops. He wipes his eyes, still grinning. He looks around the room like he expects everyone else to join in, to agree with him, to confirm what he just heard. But no one does. So he shrugs, reaches for his drink and says something about how it's fine, it's just not quite there yet. Maybe John should try again. John sets the acetate down on top of the piano, carefully, like it's fragile, like it matters. He doesn't say anything. Not yet. This is 1967. London. The center of everything that's happening in music, in culture, in the world. And these two men are at the center of that center. They're not just famous. They're defining what fame means, what rebellion means, what it looks like to be young and brilliant and untouchable. They've known each other for years. Not friends exactly, but not enemies either. There's respect, competition, the kind of relationship that only makes sense when you're both doing something no one else can do. They've been in the same rooms, the same studios, the same parties. They've traded ideas, stolen from each other, pushed each other without admitting that's what they were doing. But they've never been equals. Not really. Mick has always had something John doesn't. A looseness. A confidence that doesn't need to prove itself. He moves through the world like he owns it, like he was born knowing he'd be watched and loved and feared. John has to work for it, has to be sharper, harder, funnier, meaner, has to make sure no one ever sees him unsure. Except he was unsure about this song. And now Mick knows it. The session musicians start packing up. The conversation shifts. Someone suggests going somewhere else, getting food, finding another party. The room empties in that casual way rooms empty when something uncomfortable has happened and everyone wants to pretend it hasn't. Mick is still there. He's talking to Keith, half turned away from John, but his voice is loud enough that it's clear he wants John to hear. He's talking about a session they did last week, a track that came together in one take. How easy it was. How right. John picks up the acetate and slides it back into its sleeve. He doesn't look at Mick. He doesn't look at anyone. He walks past them, through the door, out into the hallway, and no one tries to stop him. Outside, the street is cold and bright. The kind of afternoon light that makes everything look overexposed, too clear. John stands on the curb for a moment, holding the acetate against his chest, and he thinks about throwing it, just tossing it into the gutter and walking away. But he doesn't, because here's what Mick doesn't understand. Here's what people who move through the world that easily never understand. For John, the song isn't just a song. It's a piece of him he can't put back. It's a risk he took when he didn't have to. He could have written something safe, something that sounded like the last thing. Something people would expect. But he didn't. He wrote something honest, something that scared him a little when he played it back alone in the studio. And Mick laughed at it. Not because it was bad. John knows it's not bad. But because it was vulnerable. Because it didn't have armor. Because it asked something of the listener instead of just giving them what they wanted. And Mick heard that vulnerability, and he laughed. John goes home. He doesn't talk about what happened. Not to his wife. Not to Paul. Not to anyone. He puts the acetate on a shelf, and he doesn't touch it for 3 days. But he thinks about it. He thinks about Mick's laugh. The way it filled the room. The way everyone else went silent. The way it felt like being young again. Like being the kid in Liverpool who didn't know how to dress or talk or be cool. Who had to learn it all by watching and copying and pretending until it became real. He thinks about all the times he's laughed at someone else. All the times he's been cruel, without meaning to be. All the times he's said something cutting because it was easier than saying something true. And he realizes he has a choice. He can let it go. Pretend it didn't matter. Show up at the next party and act like nothing happened. Trade insults with Mick the way they always have. Keep the friendship, or whatever it is, intact. Or he can respond. Not with anger. Not with an insult that matches the one he received. But with something else. Something that will make Mick understand what he did. What it cost. 3 days later, John is in the studio. He's reworking the song. Not because Mick was right, but because Mick was wrong. And John needs to prove it. He strips it down even further, takes out the safety nets, makes it slower, quieter, more direct. He double-tracks his voice in a way that makes it sound like he's singing to himself, like you're overhearing something you weren't meant to hear. When it's done, he knows it's the best thing he's written in months, maybe longer. He doesn't send it to Mick. He doesn't call him. He doesn't make a big announcement. He just releases it, lets it go out into the world without explanation or defense. And then he waits. The song doesn't become a hit right away. It's too strange for that. Too bare. But people notice it. Critics write about it. Other musicians talk about it. It gets under people's skin in a way the safer version never would have. Mick hears it. Of course he hears it. Everyone hears it. And he knows. He knows it's the same song. He knows what he said. He knows what his laugh meant. He calls John. Not right away, but eventually. A week later. Maybe 2. He says something vague about the track being interesting. About how John always surprises him. His voice has that same casual confidence. But there's something else underneath it now. Something smaller. John listens. He doesn't interrupt. When Mick is done talking, there's a pause. The kind of pause where one person is supposed to laugh, or agree, or move the conversation forward. John doesn't do any of that. He says, very calmly, very clearly, that he doesn't need Mick's approval. He never did. He says that he thought they understood each other. That they were past the kind of petty bullshit that insecure people pull to make themselves feel bigger. He says that he was wrong. And then he says he doesn't think they should work together anymore. Or be in the same rooms. Or pretend they're something they're not. Mick tries to laugh it off. Says John's being sensitive. Says it was just a joke. Says everyone gets criticized, everyone takes hits, that's part of the game. But John doesn't argue. He doesn't explain. He just says that maybe Mick's right. Maybe he is being sensitive. But that's his choice to make. And then he hangs up. They don't speak again for years. Not because of some public feud. Not because of managers or labels or lawsuits. Just because John meant what he said. And Mick, for maybe the first time in his life, didn't know how to fix something he broke. The friendship ends quietly. No headlines. No drama. Just 2 men who used to be in the same rooms suddenly not being in those rooms anymore. People notice, but they don't understand why. There are rumors. Someone says they fought over a woman. Someone else says it was about money, or publishing rights, or something one of them said in an interview. but no one knows the real reason, because neither of them talks about it. Mick keeps being Mick. He keeps moving through the world with that same easy confidence. He keeps making music, filling stadiums, living the life that seems effortless even when it's not. But there's something different now. A slight hesitation when someone asks him about John, a subject he doesn't quite want to touch. John keeps being John. He keeps pushing, keeps experimenting, keeps refusing to give people what they expect. He writes songs that are harder to love, that ask more of the listener, that don't apologize for being difficult. And he doesn't mention Mick, doesn't talk about what happened, doesn't turn it into a story he tells at parties. Because that's not what this is about. It's not about revenge. It's not about winning. It's not about proving Mick wrong. It's about understanding that some things can't be laughed away, that vulnerability isn't weakness, that when you offer someone something real and they mock it, you don't have to pretend it didn't hurt. You don't have to smile and move on and act like it's all part of the game. You can just walk away. Years later, someone asks John about Mick in an interview, about why they don't see each other anymore, about whether there was ever a falling out. John thinks for a long time before he answers, long enough that the interviewer starts to think he won't. Finally, he says that some people don't know how to handle honesty. They're so used to performing, to playing a role, that when you show them something real, they don't know what to do with it. So they laugh, or they dismiss it, or they turn it into a joke. He says that's fine. People can be however they want to be, but you don't have to stay close to them. The interviewer asks if he regrets it, if he wishes things had gone differently. John shakes his head. He says he doesn't regret protecting the parts of himself that matter. He says he learned a long time ago that you can't make someone respect what you make. You can't make them understand what it costs to put something true into the world. All you can do is decide who you let close enough to see it. The song that started it all, the one Mick laughed at, becomes a quiet favorite, not a commercial success. Not something people sing along to at concerts, but something that matters to the people who need it. Something that finds its way to listeners who know what it feels like to offer yourself and have it thrown back. Mick never talks about it publicly, but people who know him, who've been in studios with him, say that he's careful now, that he listens differently, that he doesn't dismiss things as quickly. Whether that's because of John or because of something else, no one can say for sure, but the timing is hard to ignore. In the end, neither of them was wrong. Mick wasn't wrong to have an opinion. John wasn't wrong to walk away. They were just two people who wanted different things from the people around them. Mick wanted ease, camaraderie, the kind of friendship that survives insults and mistakes because neither person takes anything too seriously. John wanted something else. He wanted to be around people who understood that some things are serious, that some risks matter, that when someone shows you their heart, you don't laugh at it. Those two things can't exist in the same space. Not really. Not for long. And so the friendship ended, not in fire, not in fury, but in the quiet recognition that some distances can't be closed, that some words can't be unsaid, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is stop pretending you can be what they need. The last time they were in the same room, it was at a party. Years after the phone call, years after the silence, they saw each other across the crowd. Mick raised his glass, a small gesture, almost hopeful. John nodded, polite, distant. And then John turned and walked the other way, not out of anger, not out of pride, out of clarity, because he'd learned something that night in the studio, something that took him years to fully understand, that you don't owe anyone access to the parts of you that they've already shown they can't handle, that walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom, that some friendships aren't meant to survive everything. And that's not a failure. It's just the truth. The acetate still exists somewhere, tucked away in a vault or a private collection, or a dusty shelf in a storage unit. The original version. The one Mick heard. The one he laughed at. And if you could hear it now, knowing everything that came after, you'd understand what John was trying to do. You'd hear the risk, the honesty, the refusal to hide. You'd hear why it mattered, and you'd hear why the laughter, in that moment, in that room, was unforgivable. Not because it was cruel, though it was, but because it proved that Mick couldn't see what John was offering. And once you know someone can't see you, really see you, there's no going back. You can be polite. You can be civil. But you can't be close. The story doesn't end with reconciliation. It doesn't end with Mick apologizing or John forgiving. It doesn't end with them on stage together, laughing about old times, proving that friendship can survive anything. It ends with two men who made their choices and lived with them. Mick, still brilliant, still untouchable, still moving through the world like he owns it, but carrying something small and quiet that he never quite puts down. And John, still pushing, still refusing to compromise, still protecting the part of himself that makes the work matter. Both of them a little lonelier than they needed to be. Both of them exactly as alone as they chose.